Okay, so we're up to, we left up
What
in the
time are we
bottom.
doing Matzah Yontif?
Oh, Metzia Yom Tif, 10 to 10, I guess we'll try. We'll try for 10 to 10. Right, 72 is probably 40.
We discussed tomorrow. I missed that.
Tomorrow was posted already.
Posted already.
Okay. Okay. I'm too late to the party. I'm sorry. I'm still working. I'm still in the middle of. I'm getting whatever. Okay, going in and out.
All right. All right. Okay, we left off. Oh, Bomine. Kuf Bey. What time are the Mincha Myers if anybody's going to them?
8:15.
Times are now 7:26. All right. Okay, we welcome Avrami live. Live and in person, Avrami. Here we go. All right. Okay, so Bomine, yeah, about 10 lines up from the bottom. Bomine Rav Yanai. They had a shaila from Rav Yanai. Again, we're talking about all sorts of what do they call it? Tenant. What's it called? Landlord, domestic. I don't know. Whatever. The landlord, the tenant issues. So Bomine Rav Yanai. Soicher Amar Nosati Umasarem Eloy Natalti. The Soicher said, he said, I paid. Right? Umasarem Eloy Natalti. I never got paid. Right? A standard issue. Almila Habi Raya, who has to bring a raya that they're correct? Meaning, is it normal for a person to pay his rent, or is it abnormal for a person to pay his rent? Meaning, who's the odd one out here? So I'm going to ask, well, Amos, at what point of the rental is this?
Today you can enter it by what state are you in because of the laws.
That would yeah. What do you mean? Different laws when you have to pay the rent?
In New York, you can just get out and not paying.
Well,
as some of us deal with on a daily basis.
Right. Yeah, the rent laws are a disaster in New York, right?
Correct. Very difficult.
Worse than disaster.
Beyond.
I hear. So then nobody, meaning, so let's say let's bring this to New York, yeah. So you can't be in this. It sounds like if you're saying what New York would be, then the guy says I paid. Nobody pays before you mechuyev to, right? So then he l'chayr would have to prove that he taka paid. No, that's okay. That's what l'chayr. Well, let's see the Gemara. So Amos, when is it? If it's during the time, meaning during the grace period, I guess that would be called, right? You have with the credit card, you have the time. Like, do you pay your credit card on the day it's due, or do you pay it when you get it? You have that 3-week grace period. So Tanina, we already learned that. And if it's after this man that it's supposed to be paid, Tanina, we also learned that the Tanan, Mesa, if the father, this is talking about a pidyon ben now, right? So the father has a mitzvah to be paid to the son. Right, so let's say he died, and within 30 days, so it's clearly a chazaka that he didn't do a pidyon because we wait for 30 days. Right? I'm sorry, until he brings a raya that for whatever reason he did the pidyon earlier. Right? But if it was after 30 days, who has to
bring a raya?
The Yarshim. The kid.
The kid's 30 days old.
No, eventually, when he needs to do a shidduch, but when he has to go into yeshiva,
fine.
When he has to get into yeshiva, they say you're a kohen. Okay, so do you have? I mean, whatever. You're not a kohen. You're a pidyon ben. Okay, where's your certificate? Right.
Who is he bringing a raya to? Why can't he just say, like we usually say, I gave it to the other kohen?
And a chanami, but I guess he has to prove. I don't think anybody's tining on him for the money here. Although somebody does bring that up here.
Rashi talks about it.
Right, yeah, Rashi, right? Somebody, I thought one of them were first talks about it. That right, because he's not to the kohen. Rashi says it, Taka, right? Thank you. For 5 lines up from the bottom, Rashi says the guy lo shayach lemisni lashon Yomi raya kohen la bal dinahu. What Gershon's saying is that there can be no, he can't be fighting. He can't be fighting with a kohen because he could just tell that kohen go fly a kite, right? We're not. I'm not paying it to you. I'm giving it to somebody else.
Doesn't have to answer him.
The other kohen, he doesn't.
Gave it
Yeah,
to somebody else. He doesn't have to answer the question.
yeah, and he doesn't have to. But it says, so Rashi says, who are you saying it to? The Shchenim. The Shchenim are saying, we know that you didn't get a pigeon. Right? So then I don't know why it's the Shchenim's business either. I hear, right? That's what you're saying. What's it their business? But the Shchenim's, because they're offended because they weren't invited to the pigeon abed. Maybe. So
It was at least 13 years before. It wasn't.
Yeah. Yeah. Fine. So okay, but whatever. So I guess for whatever reason, the Gemara thinks he has to defend himself. So he defends himself. So until the neighbors tell him that he was not nifta, meaning that for whatever reason the neighbors have some sort of daya over here, right? So before 30 days they have no daya because before 30 days they have a day because normal people don't do a pigeon, right? And after 30 days,
How do the
they
neighbors
do.
know?
Because they weren't invited to the pigeon abed. Right? No, I don't know why. I'm saying I guess they must know. Listen, we've had this many times. It seems like the island was very nosy back then. That's what it seems. Everybody's in everybody else's business. Right?
In the summer they would know. Fakir, they were invited to the Pidyon event. Then it didn't happen.
Well, or that's so they assumed.
Well, Rashi says that the way they find out is that the father was mitzvah them to make sure his son was paid. It's more than they were invited. The father says, "I didn't make one, and you should make sure my son makes one because I'm going to die, and he needs to. He has to pigeon." Rashi adds another caveat.
Right. You're right. That's true.
And it's more than just the fact that they didn't know. It's the fact that the father told them.
Right, but yeah.
Right.
So, right. He was saying a good point. But the question is, let's say he didn't. So then what?
How would they know? You're trying to prove a negative.
And a chanami. So
the only way to know is if you're proving a positive. The father told us he didn't do it.
Right. So then what changes about before 30 days?
It's because that.
I'm sorry, but after 30. After 30
what does that
days.
mean?
No, so basically we're saying
there's a chazaka after 30 days that he's going to do it.
Even though
they have to prove the fact that he didn't do it.
I'm saying even though the chazaka is negative what the father told them.
If the father tells him a chazaka is not 100, it's not foolproof. If mikvah's becheskas 40 saw and then l'maisa if somebody takes out saw, the chazaka doesn't stay. There's a risk it gets ruined, right?
Yeah. Anochanami. I'm saying that's the tumult here. So, anyways, with that either way. So what the Gemara is saying, not either way, but for 30 days is a chazaka. He was not. There's no pigeon, and after 30 days, not right. So we see whatever it is. You see that what's the Gemara's shaila? Does a person pay rent before it's due or not before it's due? It's beferish by pigeon abend, and he doesn't pay it before. So when it says leitzricha b'yomi de mishalim zmane, it's talking about on the due date. Right, on the day that it's done. Me of it inish the para b'yomi de mishalim zmane. Does a person pay it on the last day to pay the rent? I lie, right? Or does he not? Meaning, if he normally pays on that day, so then the owner is going to have to prove that he didn't pay. But if they don't normally pay on that day, then he would then the proof would have to be on the tenant. Fine. So Rav Yochanan. So Rav Yochanan said to Nisu, we learned this on Tamid Aleph now. Schir, a sachir. I'm sorry, sachir bismane. If you have a worker, that he wants to get paid on payday, at the end of the month, or whatever, in the middle of every 2 weeks, whatever it is. In the payday, he's saying I wasn't paid. So nishba b'noitel, he swears, and he takes his money, right? Because that's the norm is that he's normally not paid before then. Schir sachir who the Rama Rabban shvuah. So a sachir, the Chachamim put the shvuah on it to him, right? Even though normally, how do you do a shvuah? A shvuah goes on the person defending himself. Here, the sachir is not defending himself. The sachir is the one asking for the money. So really, the one swearing should be the owner. But here we put the Rabbanon, put the shvuah onto the worker, mashum the balabayas tarda b'payalav, because we're assuming that the balabayas is busy with his workers, and he doesn't remember who he paid, who he didn't pay. Aval hacha, but here in our case, seicher mehemen b'shvuah. Here, the seicher, the renter, is going to be believed with the shvuah, right? Because he's the one that's being asked to pay, and in the standard situation, the one being asked to pay can make a shvuah and then go off free. Again, I wonder how that would change nowadays with payroll. Payroll's done automated and all that, so has nothing to do with the boss being busy. But I don't know.
There's probably shots in that also, because if you let's say a missed punches, live after you paid everything. There's many ways that you could create reyes and even automated payroll.
I guess that's true. I'm saying, but here we're saying because the guy is absent-minded, so yeah. Anyways, okay, Vater. Amar Rav Nachman. Hi man, the oigerle beisel lechabri le'eseshnin. So you have this guy who rented out his house to his friend for 10 years, but there was no zman written in it. He just wrote, there's a rental for 10 years. Because of le'shtara, and he wrote a shtar saying that he's going to have it for 10 years. The only problem is there was no date. And then the owner of the property tells him, you're already there for 5 years. And Rashi says that the tenant is saying 3 years, meaning he has 7 more years to go. So Mehemen, he is believed, right? Meaning who's believed? The owner is believed. Why? Because it's considered that it's in his chazakah, right? The renter is admitting that the property belongs to the owner. It's just a matter of how long he gets to stay there for. So Mamela, we go with the one who has the chazakah. If somebody lent somebody else 100 zuz with a shtar, and he says to him, I paid you half. Is he believed? Right? We know that we're not going to believe that, meaning a person, again, a regular standard loan, right? So somebody, again, he says to a guy, I lent you 100. Yeah. And there's a shtar. And the guy, the loiva, says, I paid you half. So, is he believed? He's not going to be believed. So he said to him, there, the shtar is meant, what's the point of having a shtar? So that the malva, right, the lender could collect with it. So if it would be that he taka paid back, that the lender, that the borrower paid back the lender, he should have written that down, right? Meaning the borrower should make sure that if he prepays the loan, make sure you write that down. Or he should get a receipt. A tabra is a shoiver, is a receipt. Meaning, because again, the point of the shtar was to prove the loan. So if you paid back early, you want to make sure that you have proof to that. But here, the owner could say, "Hi diksivi lach shtara." This that I wrote a shtar. I didn't give you a shtar so that we can know how long the rental was for. It had nothing to do with anything. The reason why I gave you the shtar is that after 10 years, you're not going to say, "What do you mean? I've been living in this house for 10 years. It's mine. I didn't rent it." That was the whole point of the star. So Mamela, we don't expect the owner to be marking down every year.
Why wouldn't he set the years that it started? Wouldn't that make more sense so that you could get him out? Like if you really wanted it, he's going to be on a piece of land, so you should have written the year it started, the year it ends. Meaning, it seems like you're trying to mess yourself over because you should have stated exactly what year the schiyur started.
Yeah, I don't understand why he wouldn't do this.
Even more
Why he
than
wouldn't?
that, a star mechira, the lokeach is only chayav to keep for 3 years. So if he's scared that the guy's going to say, "I bought it, and I have a chazaka," this star is never going to help for 10 years.
Why? In 10 years it'll help.
No, they'll say, "I bought it." Oh, I gave you a star. What do you mean? I'm not chayav to keep a star anyway for more than 3 years.
I hear you. Are you saying it's not even going to work then?
Yeah. Only if he's honest. And if he's honest, if the guy trusts him and the guy's saying 3 years, not 5 years, does he trust him or not?
I hear.
So I just about burns it a little bit. He says the star creates a cold.
Well, that would answer it. That would answer it.
Right. So
That
you
would
can't.
also answer why he's Mahaman. What's the fight then? If it creates a code, then the whole town knows when he went into it.
No, I don't think the cold will be
It
strong
doesn't
enough
create a
that people are
cold
going to
when
be.
it started. It creates a cold that it was mashkanta. It's not his to keep.
Yeah.
And no one remembers when it created the code.
Yeah, who's going to remember? Who's going to remember exactly the date? I think. Okay, let's see. So that's it. Okay, next case. A person. This is also interesting. Interesting way of taking a loan. But a person can borrow something betuvai for the good, right? Like of tuvai chayinu la'olam forever. Meaning he could have a perpetual loan if he just goes to the balabas and says, "I want to borrow your hammer forever," or whatever, as long as the hammer's in good shape.
I remember like 10 years later that I lent something to somebody, that's totally normal. That he kept it for 10 years.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like.
Okay.
Rashi says you say betuva. I don't know when I say, "Can I borrow this book?"
No, it's not a stam alone. It has to be something about it. I don't know what uvetuva means. Uvetuva sounds like as long as it's in good condition.
Well, Rashi says that it's a continuous loan. So even if he gives it back for a few months, he can still take it back again.
Right.
Rashi betuva is mashma calls man that it's.
David, it depends what it is.
Yeah, you can take it whenever he needs.
What do you mean?
I'm just saying, because you reminded, when David said that, it reminded me, there was a Mr. Hans, who was a famous tailor. He made all the Rosh Yeshivas and the Rebbes that kapatas, made custom stuff. So he was nifta last year. So I mentioned it to Ami Lak. And he said, "Really?" He says, "He gave me my first shears." Mr. Han gave him. You remember, because he got shears from a chashuva person. Yeah, it was his first shears when he went into business. Yeah.
Interesting. So, but what I'm saying, so what does it mean then? So he obviously gave it to him as a matana.
Yeah,
I'm saying, but let's say he didn't give it. Let's say he lent it to him, right? So then every day you'd be able to walk into this guy's house and take his stuff because you made this deal. That's what it sounds like. I mean, it's interesting. Taisus, you look at Taisus Shayla.
Yeah, that's what Rashi says. You can take it when he needs it.
I know it's. I guess if you make that deal, so then you're allowed to do it. He basically, the owner made it hefker. Taisus says that betuva betoiva shemachzik hashoyel la'mashul yochel hashoyel l'shtamish la'olam bekelim shel la'mashul. He says ve'ein nira. Taisus says, I don't like that shot. He doesn't replace it. Doesn't replace it with a shot, but he says he doesn't like the oruch shot. That's what it means. It sounds like that's what Rashi means. Okay, so I'm not exactly sure what's going on over here, but somehow this guy can take these things at will. Yeah. So Amar Amari brought the Bashmuel. Right, so Amari, the son of the daughter of Shmuel, right? That's also an interesting thing. But who Behu the mine. He has to do a kinyan. Kinyan means kinyan chalipin. Yeah. So Amara Mari Breder Ravashu Mahadale Kate, but he has to give him back the handle. Right? Meaning if it breaks, then he has to give back the handle back to the owner. Now I then to saying why is this? I mean, isn't that pashut? You borrowed something from somebody and then it breaks. So so you give him back his handle. No?
You don't have to replace the item. You just give him back his broken kli, and you're good.
I'm assuming it was like Mesa Mahmas Malach.
So that makes it better. That makes it
Oh, but
fine.
we had this already.
Yes, he's not
We had it this morning?
chayiv on it.
No, not today. A month ago, 2 months ago, whatever. Yeah. What do you have to give back? The whole thing? You give back the broken one and the difference. We had a whole thing about that.
What I'm saying, but okay, whatever. I'm not going to understand this. Come on, even with the help of the Olam together, learning with it. See, I don't. I don't get what's going on over here. Okay, I think he's potter, but he has to give him back. He has to give him back the handle. Okay, fine. Omar Rava, Haiman Dormali Lechavre, Oishlan Mora Lemirfik Bay, Hai Pardisa. Lend me here now. Here's where you can get into real legal loopholes based on terminology. Here's where you need the lawyers, right? Oishlan Mora Lemirfik Bay, Hai Pardisa. Lend me a tool, mora is a hoe or a shovel, in order to loosen up the pardis. Rafik be'ahu pardisa. He's allowed to use it for that pardis. Pardisa, but so that's if he says hi pardisa, this pardisa. If he just said pardisa, Rafik be call pardisa devoy, then he can use any pardisa that he wants. And Rashi says even a pardis as big as the city of Antiochus. Right? Because meaning, and obviously it's going to get very worn down by using it, but doesn't make a difference because he said for any pardis. Pardisi, if he says my pardis, right? I'm sorry, Peter say it doesn't really mean.
It's for the pardisai.
Right, it's pardis. No,
plural.
it's pardi. Well, Rashi says it's called pardisi de isle v'loyamrin a tre pardisihu. He's saying that it's not two. He's saying it's, I don't even know.
No, it just means there's no miyat rabim shnayim here. If he says I want to use your shovel to cover my pardesim, he means all of them.
Right. So it doesn't. I mean, so 1 second. So pardisa is plural. Right, Rashi says,
Pardisi would be singular. Pardisai is plural.
Yeah. Okay, so anyway, so he asked him for his pardesim. Rafik Vazel called pardise to Islay. He could do all the pardesim that he owns. And then he has to give back the handle. This guy totally wore it out. So he got to give back. He comes back. He says, "Here, thank you for your loan. Here's your handle." Right? I totally wore it out. Okay, but that's again depending on the terminology of the loan. Amar Papa, Hi man Dormale Lechavre, a guy who said to his friend, Oishlan Hi Gargusa, lend me a Gargusa is a Be'er Mayim Chayim, Rashi says. Right, in order to irrigate his fields for Nafla, and then it fell, meaning like in Bereshis where they filled up all the wells. So the well got filled up. Loi bani la, right? He's not allowed to build it. Right? Meaning, even though you think, well, why shouldn't the owner be happy with him building it? But for what he can't do it. I mean, he lent him one well, and that was the well he lent him. And if it collapsed, it collapsed. Gargus saw, right? But if he said, I'm just looking at the Lashon.
He didn't say hi. He just said Gargusa.
Oh, hi, right, that's right. Yeah, the first one was hi, thank you. The first one was hi, and this one was just Gargusa, a well, but Naflan, it fell. Bonila, he could do it because he said a well. Be Gargusa, He says, give me anywhere in you, like literally means a house of a gargusa. Meaning I want to take a well anywhere. So Kari Va'azal Kam Gargusi Ba'are, he can go dig many wells in his land, Adam Misramile, until he gets a proper well. But he needs to do a kinyan sudar in order to get this. Right? And if he doesn't do it, then it's Dibura Ba'alma, and he could the renter, whoever, the owner of the field, can retract. So I don't know why in the first two cases he doesn't need to do this, but yeah. Fine. Talk to Mishnah. If a guy rents a house to his friend and it fell down, he has to give him the rent. The lender, not the lender, the owner has to provide a new house, right? All the big real estate management people here. Yeah, you have an apartment. The guy has a lease. The apartment goes kaput. You got to replace the lease. I don't know how it works legally here, but that's what you have to do according to Gemara.
What do you mean? You got a fire in the apartment?
Yeah, or kalada. The building fell down.
Legally in New York, you charge him $1 until you fix the apartment. $1 a month.
No, was he living? Was he living in the interim?
That
you don't have?
That it depends who you want to go, but that you charge him $1. That's not necessarily your problem. It's New York's problem.
I hear. Okay.
The Red Cross helps him. This,
Okay, so here we're saying that you have to give him a new house. So you katan lo yasa gadol. If it's a small house, he cannot make it big. Gadol, if it's a big house, lo yasa and a katan, he can't make it small. Echad lo yasa shnayim. If it's one house, meaning I guess a single family, shnayim lo yasenu. He should not. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Echad lo yasa shnayim. If it's a one family house, he shouldn't make it to a two family house. Shnayim lo yasen echad. And if it's a two family, he shouldn't make it into a one family. Lo yichos min hachalonos. He cannot make less windows. But lo yosef him, and he can't make more windows. Unless they both agree, unless it's the dasa, both of them, meaning the landlord and the tenant, both agree that he could change things up, so then that's fine. Meaning basically he has to give him mamish a replacement house. So you want to ask, hey, Chidami, what's the case? Idam or less bezeh, right? If he says, I'm sorry, not less bezeh, Idam or lay bayezeh, if he says that this is meaning I want this, I rented this house, nofal, then and it fell down. Ozale, that's it. It went away. Meaning he said, I'm paying you for this house. This house went away. And then he doesn't get the house. Now, obviously, he doesn't have to pay rent anymore because he's no longer living there. But that's what he's saying. And Ida Amar Le Bayastam, if he said Bayastam, so Echad Amai La Yasenu Shnayim. Why, if it's a one family, why can't he make a two family? Katan Amai La Yasa Gado. Why can't he make a big one? He just said, he said Bayastam. He didn't say any specifics. So Amar Rishlakish Damar Le Bayashani Maskalach Midas Arche Kach V'Kach. He told him that the house that I'm lending to you is this and this measurement, which is what we do nowadays, right? You specify exactly how big it is. Someone says, okay, so what's the chiddush? Of course, he has to give him back an exact house. He says a house like kizeh, I'm going to give you not zeh, but kizeh. So one says, okay, so he does have to give him kazeh. No, it's talking about where the house was on the river. It was a riverside house, meaning people like the right with the anything on the water is usually worth more money. So it's on the
ocean view.
A beach house.
Yeah. It's well here it's a nar, it's a river. So I don't know if it's the same chashivas to be on the river or not. The stama, right? Manhattan, the ones overlooking the river, I imagine more money. So anyway, so it's somewhere where the apartment or the house was on the river. Mao the same. And then so basically when he said kazeh, he meant two things. Kazeh, that it's on the river, and kazeh, that's the same or similar size. So you would think, okay, he can replace him with an apartment that's not on the river. That's the same my kazeh the koyagud denara. What does it mean kazeh? That it's on the that he meant that kazeh is that I'll give you a riverfront, right? But kazeh is not going on the size of the apartment. Kamash Malam was saying that it's going on both, and therefore the landlord has to replace him with a similar size, and it has to be on the river. So Hadron Allah Hashoyel L'chaim. If anybody's out there that's does L'chaims.
Chaim.
Who's hurt?
He's there. He just
Okay.
is there.
Paris is in his Fleischer kitchen, Erev Shavuos.
Yeah, I was gonna say this is not for him this holiday with the milks.
Yeah, of course. I got 44-day aged meat.
Okay, well, l'chaim to that.
Catching up to the sphere, you know what I mean?
You see, that should really be the minhag of Shavuos. Now
But
that
to
we
count.
have the hilchos of kashrus and things, so fakert, we should eat 44-day aged meat. The other reason was they didn't have
If you skip a day in middle, what happens?
Right.
I don't know about your 44th age meat, but I learned of Sternbuch today, and the original halach was you have to eat meat that's like 2 days, the most 2 days old. Otherwise, it's no good.
Yes, right. He said yes.
Paris, no meat for a baron.
You saw that? What'd you say? You saw Rav Sternbuch say that?
Yeah, Maidim is manim.
Yeah, he brings it from a Gemara Sanhedrin that it's only misameach for 2 days. We said that. I think I said it somewhere. I don't know. That's what Gemara says.
That's how we get
Yeah,
the
he
meat
said that,
from
but
the
that's
freezer.
probably before they had freezers, no?
What?
That's probably before they had freezers.
So that's
no?
that's what you have to answer.
We can't get meat that's less than 2 days old. That's how it gets to us. It's more than 2. No.
Yes, it's after rigor mortis.
Yeah,
and
you
it's
wouldn't
frozen.
get any of this. Yeah, you wouldn't get. It's nowadays you can't possibly have it.
Only Rachamim could.
Yeah.
Aaron, on your trip, they didn't have that fresh meat.
Oh, Kiva's back in town.
Finally found one.
Now, only because we're talking about it just for a quick second. Why is it better to eat the milchiks by night?
Because it's not necessarily a chiyuv to eat meat. The chiyuv to eat meat is with the karbonos. So the karbonos is during the day. So mamela, even though you could eat the karbonos at night, but the karbonos are brought during the day. So mamela, you do it. It's again, it doesn't have to be, but that's what some poskim say. Okay, Zokta Mishnah. Hamakabel sada mechaveira. If somebody's makabel a sada from his friend, meaning, so again, we're going to be dealing with a lot of sharecroppers. There's 2 different types. There's really, well, at least 2 different types. There's a sharecropper who basically is taking a percentage of the field, meaning if whatever he produces from the field, he'll get 10%, 20%, 30%, whatever the contract is. Meaning he'll have to pay 20%, 30% to the owner. The other way is like a standard rental. You rent it, and no matter what you produce from the field, you have to pay rent, and that's it. Right. So again, one is tied. The rent is tied to a percentage of the production, and the other one it's not. It has nothing to do with that. Yeah. So.
Which is important because certain halachas are only negea for one of one of them. What's the other one?
What are you saying?
So it's important because a lot of Rashi points out a lot of the Mishnayos later on are only applied to one of the arrangements versus the other one.
What I'm saying? Who are you saying this from?
The Mishnah, a lot of the halachas later in the parak, Rashi points out they only apply to one of these 2 arrangements. So I'm saying it makes a big.
That's the next stop. That's the next stop.
Right.
Yeah. Some of the halachas are gonna apply only to a sharecropper, and some are going to only be applied to a choiker. That's what it's called, a choiker, right? A makabel is
Tenant
basically a
farmer.
sharecropper.
A tenant farmer.
A tenant farmer?
That's what it's called, the tenant farmer, yes.
A tenant, I guess he's a tenant. Yeah. Okay, so makabel sadar mechaver, somebody's makabel sadar and makam shenagu liktzar yiktzar. If it's the makam that the minig is that the way you harvest the wheat is by cutting it down, which means that there's going to be stubble left over. Then if that's the minig, the way you do it, then that's the way the sharecropper has to do it. Lak or yakar. If it's meant to be totally uprooted, then that's what you have to do. Lachrish acharov yachrish. If it's the minig that you have to plow after you're done with the field, you have to give him back clean, like like we have an Airbnb, right? You got to give it back clean, right? So even though you harvested everything, you got to go now plow and give it back. So if that's the minig, then you have to plow it too, even though he's not going to get benefit from it because his rental is over or his sharecropping time is over. Hakol minig hamadina. Everything goes based on minig hamadina, right? Kishem shecholkin betfua, and then the Mishnah says the same way that they split up the tvua kacholkin beteven ubekash. They also split up the straw, and teven and kash is two different types of straw. Meaning, even though that's not really what the field was rented for, but that's Kishem shecholkin beyayin, and the same way they split up the wine, meaning he has to pay a percentage of the wine. Kacholkin on Tamei Beis now, Bismairas, they also switch the branches of the konim and the sticks, or right, Vishneim Mesapkin, and we'll see in the Gemara what that means. Vishneim Mesapkin is a konim, and both of them have to give the sticks, meaning the sticks that you put the vines over. So those have to be provided by both of them, meaning they split it. The sharecropper and the owner, they both split it. Okay, so Zok Gemara, Tana. Malcolm Shanago Liktzar Aina Rishoy Lakar. Lakar Aina Rishoy Liktzar. So whatever the minig is, that's what you have to do. Ushnei Ma'akin Zezeh, and they both can push off each other, meaning each one could say, nope, the minig in this Medina is to harvest it and to cut it, and that's the way we're going to do it. Fine. So Liktzar Eina Rishoy. When I leave off here, yeah. So Liktzar Eina Rishoy Lakar. What does it mean if he's meant to cut it, he can't uproot it? Hi Omar Be'inu the Tamali Are. This one, meaning the owner of the land, says, I want the little, when you cut it, so there's a little bit of grain left, so I want that there. But hi Omar Loy Matzina, and the other one says, I can't, meaning the other one could say, I mean, each one's tining if the other one wants to do something different. So if the sharecropper wants to uproot it, so the owner could say, I don't want you to uproot it because I want that little bit of growth there. And if the landowner wants to say that he wants it uprooted, so the sharecropper could say, I don't want to. It's too difficult. I'm saying no, the other way around. I just want to cut it. I don't want to uproot it because it's too hard. Is that what he's saying, or is it the other way around? Yeah, no, it's too hard. It's too hard for him to uproot it, right?
Yeah,
fine. Lakar. Yeah, that's what it is. So that's okay. I'm just mixing up the other way. That's the other way. Lakar ain't a reshay likzo. If he says to be oiker, it's not mutter for him to cut it. Hayom Rabbeinu de tinakar are. I want a clean field. I don't want it to be cut. I want it to be uprooted. Hayom Rabbeinu tivna. The other one says, I want the straw. I want a little bit left over of straw. Okay. Ushnei ma'akim zeh lumli. What does it mean that they both mark of each other? Matam kamer means what's the reason? Matam likzer enu shay lakar and lakar enu shay likzer. Why is it that if he wants to cut it, he cannot uproot it? And why is it uprooted? He can't cut it. From the shnei ma'akin zeh because they're both ma'akiv each other. Fine. Lachresh acharav yachresh. If the minig Medina is to plow, so then you have to plow pshita, right? So it's pashut. Like tzricha, meaning if that's the deal, then that's what you have to do. So like tzricha, ba'asr deloy menachshi, it's talking about a town that you don't weed, you don't take out the weeds. And this sharecropper went and he did take out the weeds. Mao, the same Amrale, this that I did the weeding of the field, that I did the like krivnala. The reason why I did the weeding, even though I didn't have to, was because I wanted to be yaitza my plowing after the harvest. He still, even though he weeded it, which was going lifnim mishuras adin, but he doesn't get out of it. Right? So Akol Kaminig Medina, everything is like the Minig Medina. What is Akol coming to include? So let's say there was fruit trees growing in the land. So you're really just renting him the karka and not the trees. So if the makam is that if there's a tree in the field, he gets to keep it, so then it's his. Maschirin makam she'ein nagu lahaschir. I'm sorry. Makam she'ein nagu lahaschir lonis agabi karka maschirin. Then you can give it to him. Makam she'ein nagu lahaschir ein maschirin. Then you don't get the tree. So Gemara says makam she'ein nagu lahaschir maschirin pshita it's pashet. L'tzricha the kuli amayavi betilsa. Everybody holds that you give it for a third. Meaning the going price for the sharecropper was that he has to give a third of what he grows. And then he goes and he gives it, he only paid him a quarter. So he gave him less. Mao, the same, the Amrale, hi, the Batsri Loch. The reason why I gave you less, that I did the Loch even the Loch Belano is, meaning not, he didn't give him less, meaning the reason why I gave you, he gave him, meaning, I shouldn't say give him less, he charged him less. Normally, he's supposed to take a third of the crop. He only charged him a quarter of the crop. And he said, the reason why I charge you only a quarter is because I don't want to give you, the trees that are growing there. If he Chaka dropped his rates for this guy because he didn't want him to take the trees, then he should have said it. And since he didn't say it, so he loses out on both ways. He loses out the tree, and he doesn't get the same price. Fine. Why do
you need each case to teach Ibayla Lefusha?
And why do you need so many cases?
Yeah, once you say that it's Ibayla Lefusha, should I know every single case Ibayla Lefusha when it comes to Minig Medina?
You want to just say how many Ibayla Lefusha do we need?
Yeah.
Maybe it's. One of them. The cases are very different.
But either way, like why? I understand they're different, but if you're not mefarish, you're not mefarish. Why should I think that in this case, that I could have a taina? Minig Medina is the Minig Medina.
No, but here in one of them, he charged him less, right? The other one is the guy did him a favor. I don't know. Okay, I hear. Yeah, fine. Okay, let's see. If it's a makam that the minig is not to rent, so you don't rent, pshita, right? Like this is the opposite now. The kuliyam makabli b'riva. Everybody is pays a quarter, but ozal ihu v'kivla b'tilsa. And he goes and he was makabel for a third. Mao, the same Amrale, hide the tfailach. This that I gave you more, meaning I gave you a third. Adaita the obviously be'elanis. That's because I thought you're going to give me the trees. He should have told him that no, we live in a town. We live in a town that it's what do you call it? That we don't give the trees, and that's it. Fine. So the same way they split up the grain, they also split up the types of straw. So Amar of Yosef, but Bavel nehigu deloyavi tivna larisa. And Bavel is the minig that they don't give the straw to a sharecropper. Okay, so there's no, that's the minigam bubble. The minaf kamina. Who cares? Why are you telling this for? The Gemara answers, the ika inish the yave ayin yafahu v'loy gamina. If there's a person who does give the straw, it's an ayin yafa, and we don't learn it out. We don't learn out from him, and you can't bring proof from him. The minigam medina is in Bavel, they don't give. Some Rav Yosef bukhra, the tafsa v'arkavta. Those are 3 layers of dirt to make. I guess I'm not exactly sure what this dirt is supposed to accomplish. Maybe it's like a boundary. So those 3 levels of dirt, the kine, the chizra, and the pieces of the sticks that you use with thorns. So the balabayas, that all that stuff, the balabayas has to provide, because those are the basics of his land. The chizra gufei, but the actual thorns, the arisa, that the oris has to give. Why? Because klala de milsa, this is the rule. Kol ikar balma de balabais. Anything that's from the ikar of the basic, not safety. What do you call it? Shmira. The shmira, the security of goes to the balabais. Meaning he has to provide some sort of basic security. Itirusa yisirta, but you want your extra security, then the arisa that comes from the oris. Gomer of Yosef. Yosef says mara the zivla. The zvila, the amara is a hoe, and the zvila is a shovel. The davla is a bucket. The zarnuka and a bottle, meaning those are all things that they use to transport the water. So that goes to the balabayas. Harisa, but an harisa, avid, bay, ya'ari. But a sharecropper, he has to make the ditches, because if the sharecropper is the one that wants to schlep the stuff over, so then, meaning he has the stuff that to schlep over from the river in order to irrigate the field. So that has to be provided by the owner, because he has to provide some sort of irrigation system. But if the sharecropper wants to, instead of having to schlep things in a bucket, he wants to just dig up some holes, then that's his responsibility. Okay. So the same way they split the wine, so they also split the konim and the zmaris. The konim mayav, what exactly are you doing with these reeds? So Amrid Veravyane konim hamuchlokin, they're smooth konim, shebehen mamidin as a kvanim, that they hold up the grapevines with it. So that's what they're doing there. Ushneim misabkin as a konim, and both have to provide the konim, meaning the landowner and the sharecropper, lamali. Right? What is that for? So matam komer, it's explaining the reason for the previous line of the Mishnah. Matam shneim chalka b'konim. Why is it that they both split the reeds? Mashum d'shneim misapkin as a konim, because the reason why they split it is because they both have to provide it. So if they both have to provide it, so then they get to split it too when it's all done. All right. Okay, I really would like to go a little weiter because we have to make up some ground. So I guess whoever has to daven, whatever. Okay, so makabel sada mechavera. We'll try and go a little bit more. If a guy's makabel of sada from his friend, he base hashlachin or base ha'ilon. And it's a base hashlachin or a base ha'ilon. I mean, it's a field that's irrigated, or it's a field that has a tree. So meaning he made a deal that's the field that he's getting. Yavesh Hamayin b'Nixas Ilan, and then the Mayan got dried up, and then the tree got cut down. So now this is not the field that the sharecropper thought he was getting. So Eina Manakalem and Chakuroi, he cannot subtract. See here it calls it Chakuroi. That's like the other type of that's like a renter. He cannot subtract from his rent. Why? Because he didn't say. He was just makabel the field from his friend. It happened to be an irrigated field. It happened to be had a tree. So Mamela, he lost out. But im Amar like Chakarli Sade Bais Hashlachin Zu, but he said, rent me this irrigated field, I saw the Beis Ilonze, or this field, Yavesh Hamayin, V'Niktzat Ilan, then the Mayan dries up and the tree is it gets cut down, then he can subtract it from his rent, because it's not the field with the qualities that he wanted. So again, You know what I'm saying? It's just totally in whether he asked for one field or he asked for like a field or he asked for a specific field.
Lamaisa, why isn't there an issue of like, if you say Sirius is like buying something, why isn't it an issue of like a person would pay extra for that type of field if it's Chakiris? Meaning, I'm willing to pay more, let's say, core for to lease this type of field over another field that doesn't have this. Why can't you say that's built into the it's an umdana that I'm not going to pay more if it happens that this irrigation gets lost. I wouldn't pay for something like that. I don't know if it's a mecca choice, but it's just I'm not paying for a field this much, or it's almost like I know like it's not worth that much if I'm gonna lose out on the irrigation part.
You're saying that it's not going to be a field at all?
No, it's not worth whatever I'm gonna. I let's say I give 50 core for a field like this because it has irrigation. I'd only give 40. A normal field like that would only go for 40 core for Hakiras, let's say, if it doesn't have irrigation. So if it doesn't have irrigation, I'm overpaying for field like that. That's my point. So I don't know if it's a no, but you're overpaying for it at that point.
I hear.
The value of the lease is only such that it's almost like when it comes to nursing homes, you're not going to take on a building that doesn't have that has low census. And if you find out it doesn't, you're going to renege on the deal. If you find out it has only 50 people in there and it was supposed to have 150, you're going to renege on the deal.
Right, I hear. I'm not sure.
Kiva, reneging is not a good word. That means you put saying that that's his fault. He'll back out, but not reneging.
Right. I'm wondering. All right, I was saying more like it's like I'm paying extra for that. That's what I'm asking.
Yeah, but it sounds like this guy's not doing it on purpose. I'm saying it.
So then what? Mazel Garam, is that the Taina?
Oh, so we're gonna get to that in a couple
of
blocks.
Saying, but I don't know if that's the Taina in this case.
Right.
I hear. You're saying it's Mazel Garam at that point.
Well, we're gonna say, well, let's see the Gemara because it's really gonna be a Gemara Viter on Kufhei. But let's see. So let's see how the Gemara answers. The Gemara says, "Hey, what's the case? The big river going through town dried up. And then why doesn't he subtract it from his chakura, from his rent? Name Malay, Makas Medina. It's a Makas Medina. What do they call that? An act of God, right? It's an act of God. So therefore, he's on the hook, right? Samra Papa. So the Papa said the Yavish Narazuta. The big river didn't dry up. The small river dried up, right? The ones that feed off the big river. Damarle on Tamar Aleph now. Davla, you can still irrigate your field. You just got to go to the big river and bring it in a bucket. Right? You bring your bucket and it can go into you can bring it from the river. Right? Fine. So that's why he doesn't have to pay. Samara Papa, Hani Tarti Masnisa Kamaisa, the first two Mishnahs of this parak, Mishkachas Labein, yeah.
I hate to do this, but it just clicked me in cup. There's a book, I sort of review of the Mississippi River. So talking about a big river, I couldn't believe when I read it, but it says 100,000 named tributaries feed into the Mississippi River. 100,000 different things, streams, rivers, feed into the Mississippi.
Feed into or from?
Into. 100,000.
Wow. That's pretty good.
So
interesting. All right. So, but this is okay. So I guess if the Mississippi dried up, well, this is really coming out, right? Not coming in. Yeah, interesting. Okay.
The Mississippi feeds the Gulf of Mexico, which so all the rivers go down to the ocean. Essentially,
well, that's right. Yeah.
Like Neversink, eventually gets to Delaware, gets to Faraco.
Right. So if that dried up, so that's mamash an act of God. But the ones feeding in, so we could say to the guy, no, you don't get a discount. You're sorry, you have to schlep it with a bucket. Okay, so Bahani Tati Masisa Kamaz, the first two missionaries, Mishkachas Labein Bechakrusa, Bein Bekablanusa, whether it was paying rent or whether it was kablanus. Mikan Ve'elach, the Isa Bekablanusa, Lesa Bechakrusa, all the Mishnah is coming up. If it could be Nageya to a kablanus, which is a sharecropper who's paying a percentage. But it will not be Nageya to somebody who's paying rent. If it's Nageya to somebody who's paying rent, like a set fee, less of the kablanus is not in kablanus. Fine. So then the Gemara says, the base hashlachin zeh. If he said, I want this field, so then that goes to that's that then, and it dries up. So then he can subtract it from the rent. Another one of these weird concepts in halacha, which is that why don't you just say no? It was just called a beis hashlach, and it's just called an irrigated field because that's just the name. It doesn't actually mean that it's irrigated, right? I don't know how that works, but
Mr. Schlochen owns it. Mr. Schlochen owns it. They call him the base Schlochen.
Maybe. Yeah. So I don't. The only thing I'm thinking is like when you say sometimes you have these baseball stadiums that are called a park, right? That's Rabban. This is my only. It's like this park, that park. What do you mean? You go there and you think you're getting swings. You rented out the park. Oh, it's a good park. Yeah. It's no swings, no nothing.
Yaakov, that's I think of it all the time. When these creepy Yankees, they have their commercial. When they're having a bat day, a place, whatever, a bobblehead day. It's like our first 18,000 guests will get. What do you guess? I'm giving you $50 a ticket. I'm guests. We're going to guess that. They call them guests.
Right. That's interesting. Right. So you say okay. So that's yeah. So like something along those lines. So if you call it, it's just by name, right?
They do that.
You're totally misleading.
If you hit it out of the park, that means you made a home run. You hit it out of the park. It was a home run, right?
Yes.
I think so.
Yes.
Yeah, that's true. So, but it's not a park, right? It depends how you define a park. I don't know if it's a good mushal or not. Either way. Mila Tani, then we learned the price. So I'm a base core offer ani Michael. A guy tells his friend, I'm selling you a base core of dirt. Right? Even though there's only a lesech, which is a half a core, it means it reaches him, meaning it works. All he sold him was the name. Right? But for who the mystery base core, as long as it's called a base core, meaning the tzibur has to call it a base core. He can't decide that he's calling it a base core. It means it has to be. Everybody says, "Oh yeah, that's a base core." Right? Karmani Moichelach, I'm selling you a vineyard. Even though there's no grapes in it, right? He still has to buy it. He only sold him the name, right? For who? The miskari karma, that field has to be called a vineyard, right? So I mean, meaning the pshat is that it has potential for a vineyard. I don't know. Sure, sounds like you can sell somebody the Brooklyn Bridge, right? I sold you a bridge made out of Lego, but I called it the Brooklyn Bridge. But you're sorry, I don't, whatever. People call it a bridge. The bridge is a bridge. Pardes, even though there's no pomegranates, right? It has to be also called the pardes. Alma, what do you see from these three cases? He could tell him, I was just selling to you by the name. Let the owner say, I just called it an irrigated field. That doesn't actually mean that it's an irrigated field. So Mashmul like kasha is not a kasha. One is talking about where the machkir, the owner, is telling it to the renter. And this is where the chayker is telling it to the machkir. Right? Meaning what? If it's the owner saying it to the chayker, shma ba'alma amrle. So he was just calling it, yeah, this is my irrigated field right here. He says, I just like to call it my irrigated field. Right? Yeah. So amrle, but the tzibur also has to call it an irrigated field. But if it's the renter asking the owner, Kpeda, that's he was makpid. Why is he asking for irrigated field? It means he must really want an irrigated field. That's teretz number one. Ravino Amar Idi Damar Le Makpid Lechoiker. They're both talking about where it's the owner saying it to him. When he says the word zeh, mechlal de koibe gavoskin, it's talking about where they're standing in the field, and that's what he said. I'm going to rent you this field. Why did he add the words beis hashlochen? Beis hashlochen lamer le'lememer. Why did he have to say beis hashlochen? The kamar lei beis hashlochen the kaima hashta. It's a beis hashlochen the way it is right now, meaning it's right now irrigated. So since it's irrigated right now, so therefore it will. That's it. He has to maintain that irrigation, and if it doesn't, then he's going to have to. Then he's going to have to pay. Yeah. Okay. We should do a little more, but okay. Some of the items signed off, so we'll stop over here. All right. Thank you for tuning in early.
Interesting. According to most of the Rishonim, Kabbalah Satira Nasiv and Ishma was today.
Correct.
Daled Sivan. We started Hamikabel, Kabbalah.
Oh, Daled or tomorrow? Hey, no, Zion.
Like Gimel, Daled, and Hey. There was one on Gimel. They said Nasir.
Right, that's the machlokes.
According to some of the Rishonim, they said Nishma also.
Right.
On Daled, my Shabbeinu came up and down. They said Nasiv and Ishma, and on Hey also Nasiv and Ishma.
Yep. One day closer to the eagle.
What seems to make everything so complicated? Shavuos is tomorrow night.
That was Matan Torah. Kabbalah Torah was before.
Yeah.
What do you say, davening? You say it's my Matan Torah Seder, it's my Kabbalah Torah Seder.
No, Matan.
Right. Kabbalah Torah was earlier.
I hear. Right.
Plus, we didn't receive the Luchas until Yom Kippur. It's not. Anochi Hashem was what happened on Shavuos. That's it.
Right. Yeah.
Guys, you need more cheesecake.